The show is called Video Nasties. Video Nasties is actually a real thing, which was a list of 74 movies that were banned for sale in England because they were considered tasteless and damaging to the public.
A threat to society.
Threat to society. So right now you're listening to Vincent and Terry and
Barry Nephew.
Barry Nephew, who wrote his college thesis on Video Nasties.
Not only did I write my college thesis, I actually went to college just to get my hands on some Video Nasties.
Because you couldn't get the things.
You couldn't get the things, they banned the things.
So how did you get them?
You go to college.
I went to college, I befriended a lecturer who had a private collection. And yeah, I let him blow me a few times, but I got to see everything.
Nice.
And I mean everything.
Saw the whole thing.
Saw the whole thing.
Yeah, so...
Animal Farm, Faces of Death, I Spit on Your Grave, but the classy stuff, Straw Dogs,
I Spit on Your Grave.
Clockwork Orange.
That was banned?
Well, it was actually withdrawn by Kubrick because of criticisms of the rape scene, by all accounts, and he withdrew it himself. So it wasn't actually a video nasty, but you couldn't get hold of it unless you had access to a private collection.
Wow.
And that was UK only.
This was UK only, of course.
So how did that come into play? Because for a bit of background information, the UK had the British Board of Film Censors, and that was a group. I don't know if were they appointed by the government or was it privatized? I know originally they would give advices and say, cut this out, trim this, etc. In order for your movie to be allowed to be released in the UK.
No, that's correct. Were they appointed by the government? I think they were a non-governmental body, but with the remit to be able to do that.
Right.
During the relevant time, the chair was a bloke called James Furman.
And which time frame are we talking?
Okay, the first Video Nasties, I think around 1981, 1982. That was when the term was coined, so to speak. But I mean, the term itself, I mean, it actually sounds quite cute, like, you know, the film Critters or
yeah, exactly.
The Gremlins, the Video Nasties.
Which is an English kind of thing, where things that sound cute to people outside of the UK are actually awful. Like the word cunt, you can't say that in England.
True, it's highly offensive.
Yes. Whereas in Australia, you can just go, Australia, cunt!
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Video Nasty sounds cute, but it was... you know, the tabloids, you know, the Daily Mail, the Daily... The Stormer.
The Sun, they're always
the Sun,
responsible for everything.
The Sun, yeah.
No, there was the National Viewers and Listeners Association. This was a movement led by a crabby old woman called Mary Whitehouse. And basically they wanted to stop people having fun. Mm-hmm. They wanted to take away all the sex and the violence from movies, from television, from music, probably even, and I probably religiously based around religion.
Similar to the parents. What's it called? The council, the people responsible in the US for the parental advisory, explicit content.
Tipper-Gore.
Yes, Tipper-Gore.
And the whole penis landscapes.
Yes.
Dead Kennedys thing, wasn't it?
That was Dead Kennedys, who were, because they were a small time, the Dead Kennedys released an album called Frankenchrist, and it came with a poster by Hans-Rudi Giger, which was Valley of the Penises. And it was, as all of Giger's work, it's very phallic, very, very genital. And they figured the PMRC, as the organization is called, which stands for Parents Council, figured that Kennedys are small enough, we can sue them and set a precedent. Sue them for distributing pornography, even though it's art. It's, you know, you've seen Giger's work, you've seen The Alien. The Alien is big penis.
Basically.
Yeah. Figure we can sue them. They didn't count on the fact that the dead Kennedys wouldn't settle and actually went to court with them. And I do believe that they won. They at least were not charged for distributing pornography. So that it's for those of you not English, that's the kind of organization that was.
No fun, no happiness, no joy.
Exactly.
By out of the old farts brigade.
And you can't watch this because you're not mature enough, or you're too stupid. You will be influenced.
Yes.
You will run around with a chainsaw if you saw Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for instance. That was a banned film, I think.
I don't think it was.
Well, no, you couldn't get it from the video store. Yeah.
Well, it was released in '74. So it would have to be a re-release, because a lot of the video nasties were actually direct-to-video in the first place. Because this was, 1981, before Star Wars. All these movies you could see in theaters because the movie industry was different. You would have, instead of the worldwide release that you have nowadays, a movie would be released gradually. So in the US, it would go from state to state and make its money that way. And you would have schlock. You would have a movie like Zombie, or Zombie 2, depending on where you are, was played in drive-in theaters. You could see that in the movies. And then Star Wars came out, Jaws before that, and they were the first nationwide releases where a movie was released in every theater, in every screen at the same time, which completely changed the business. So theaters only really wanted to show the big budget movies. Luckily, VHS became affordable then, and you had this massive boom of horror and schlocky science fiction movies sold as video. So that's when direct-to-video started happening. So a lot of these movies that were banned were never released theatrically, except in Italy, maybe. But you could get them direct-to-video. Except in England, where they would be banned.
Yeah, but it makes no sense, because these people get to watch the entire movie in its full form, and then say nobody else in the entire country is allowed to see that piece.
Yes. Unless you cut a few seconds out here, a few seconds out there.
That makes no sense at all.
And it was completely arbitrary, because they didn't have a set of rules. It's a group of 6 people.
Older people.
Yes, exactly, who say, okay, who decide based on...
Were they down with the kids?
They were most certainly not down with the kids.
But the situation you had then in the 80s was that there were a number of these legendary films.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the ones you had to get.
You had to see them. You had to get your hands on them. And usually, depending on who you knew, you might get like a 5th, 6th, 7th generation copy. Fuzzy. Snow all over the screen, the sound and the picture are kind of discombobulated. But you could say then, oh, but I saw it.
Yeah.
Thank God for torrents.
Halfway through, E.T. would come on and then the movie would flick back.
Yeah. You had to get your hands on that stuff. And this is something, for me, I didn't grow up in the UK, so we didn't have the censorship issue. But I got into horror movies when I was 8 years old. And I couldn't rent them; they would just not give them to me. So it was I still had to bootleg them, borrow them, etc. So I can relate to that part. But you would need, same thing with how I used to get my video games, is you would need to have like a friend whose dad has an uncle who works in France, who would get the movie, and you would get it with weird subtitles or
smuggled over in
a tin of beans.
It was just like a normal tape with a sticker on it saying "wedding video."
Yeah.
2. And you had to the news for 3 minutes, and you didn't think the movie was going to start, and then it came on.
But it became a kind of obsession, growing up at that time, and you had to see it, and if it was a badge of honour. Yeah. And those in the know knew about it and, talked in these lofty terms about, the stuff that they'd seen that other people hadn't seen. And so, yeah.
Can you name an example of a movie of 2 or 3 movies that were just legendary that everybody you knew wanted to get their hands on?
Well, Faces of Death was a specific one.
Which is
the first
Dutch.
one.
Which is Dutch. Faces of Death is Dutch. And for those of you, again, not in the know, it was a compilation video of bits of real deaths, like bungee jumping accidents, and that guy the newscaster who shot himself in the head on TV.
The monkey brain eating scene.
The monkey brain eating scene, and that was the most poignant for me. And I think it was that scene that got it banned. And
But if you look it up now, it was all fake.
Yeah.
Really?
About 3/4
No.
it was fake. The monkey eating scene was fake. Three-quarters of Faces of Death would be fake, and there was news footage, hurricane sweeping up someone.
Yeah.
And that was Dutch, and there were I think 5 or 6 volumes. I remember seeing those in the video rental shop around the corner from me, and just the artwork just fascinating, because the first 2 had like a cool drawn kind of thing, and after that they just used a skull on it, which was kind of boring. I remember, I think it was the first one where it was it kind of looked like RoboCop, but it was a guy with a metal thing crushing his head.
Yeah. That was the magician, and he said he could get out of the thing before it dropped on his face. All fake. The whole lot was fake.
Yeah. Yeah, after that they did something called...
You're shattering the illusions, are you, Mike?
Sorry, man, but yeah.
After that they did something called Guinea Pig, which was just torture, but that was all fake.
The Guinea Pig series.
Yeah.
Flowers and Flesh and all that lot.
Yeah. All of that was fake.
But in America, the guy was put in jail, wasn't he? Or
at least prosecuted.
Yeah.
Same thing, the director of Cannibal Holocaust, which was not a video nasty, but some of the rip-offs were. He was also put on trial. He had to prove that he did not actually go to the Amazon, to the rainforest, and kill a bunch of people. Have his actors kill some native tribe.
And this is the whole thing, is it really a snuff movie? And
that was the term,
so-called
snuff.
Snuff. Yes.
But it doesn't exist. It's all fake.
Yeah. I mean, snuff movies exist, but that's not what these things were. No. I remember Cannibal Holocaust in particular, there's the bit where the woman is impaled, the spike goes through her vagina, out through her mouth. And the director this was in Italy, he had to bring the actress to the court and use the prop, which was a pole with a bicycle seat on the top that she would sit on, and then she would have an extra thing in her mouth. That's all it is. Why would you kill someone when you can, for less money than it would take to buy a shovel to bury the corpse, you could have a prop.
Yeah, but if you think about it on the flip side, it just breeds publicity.
Oh, it does. Oh, God, yeah.
In a big, big way.
Yeah.
It gets people addicted.
Yeah.
Can you go a step further? Can you go a step further? Can you go a step further? I mean, other films from that period. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you couldn't get your hands on for love or money.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, had a cinematic release 10 years previously, but then in the 80s, you couldn't get it on video. So it was one of these mythical movies that you actually had to see. Mm-hmm. And it actually is quite it's a great horror film.
Yes. I saw it in theaters a couple of weeks ago. They had a double screen. It was Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Carrie. And I'd seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre a number of times already, but seeing it on the big screen, it just the sound, the music is so disturbing because there's no gore in it. There's no blood. They didn't have the money for effects. But the use of music and the disturbing imagery, all the animal skeletons in the house, it's a very disturbing movie. It's great.
Yeah. There's also the guy in the wheelchair at the start. I mean, I just think that's quite poor taste, the way the guy acts, if he is indeed acting.
You mean the
minivan? No,
the handicapped kid.
The handicapped kid. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean,
for me, that's the least tasteful part of the whole film is his performance. To be honest.
Well, yeah, he's kind of
he
an
deserves
asshole.
to die.
Kind of, he's kind of an asshole. But they also shouldn't have brought him along in that hot ass van to go make sure that their family's grave isn't desecrated. So that's fair enough. Fair enough. I wouldn't be happy either.
But I mean, you can also look at it this way: like some of the rapey stuff and that. Yeah, you can say, okay, you know, you shouldn't watch it, but if you want to, there you go.
Okay, so you're talking about, you know, just if there's a rape scene in a video nasty, that's banned.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, because we were talking about Last House on the Left before, and Terry, we watched that.
It was awful.
Yeah, it was
absolutely
an extremely unpleasant movie.
Who was the director? Was that
Wes Craven?
That is Craven. That was Craven's
his
first film.
movie.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
really unpleasant movie. It's about a group of just crazy people, and they rape a lot and they kill. And what I really don't like is the comedic music played during the rape scenes. And I don't find that very pleasant. None of it's enjoyable, and it's one of those typical exploitation movies where it's pretty shit the whole movie through, but there's one hook, one gimmick to get the people in the seats, and that's in the case of The Last House on the Left. All these psychos commit these horrible crimes, and then they end up in the house of the parents of one of their victims, and the parents kill the psychos in very gruesome ways.
Okay.
That's the gimmick. But it's a very unpleasant movie, and I don't think there's any good reason to watch it.
So it's like a violent Home Alone.
Not even, because that would be entertaining. There's Phantasm 3, which has kind of a violent Home Alone section, sort of at the start. I wouldn't recommend it for any reason. It's not nice to look at. It's not well filmed. Violence is unpleasant. I prefer fantasy violence.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm okay with extreme gore.
Yeah, but
if it's fantastical.
On that sense, if you look at I Spit on Your Grave, the original.
I mean, I haven't seen that. But
she gets gang raped at the beginning, and she takes revenge on him. It's okay, but you know,
it's motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's clearly it's a trick.
Yeah,
to get people to look at this, and that's the thing. It's a lot of it is this sideshow, this carnival barker kind of thing, where they go like, look at the crazy shit we're going to show you. This is this horrible taboo, and you get to see that in my movie. See her revenge on her attackers, blah blah blah. It's the Day of the Woman, which was an alternate title for Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah.
I know a criticism that's often leveled at these kinds of movies and horror movies in general is misogyny and sexism, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. Because the thing is, in all those movies, even in Giallo, which is the Italian slasher genre, which revolves around someone killing beautiful women, it's not because of some sort of hatred towards women or you get your kicks out of killing a woman. It's the taboo. It's because you have, I mean, traditionally through the centuries on, women were they were the weaker sex. They needed to be protected, and killing them in a brutal way is not satisfying. But it's a taboo. You're not supposed to do that. It's the worst possible thing you could do. Remember Fight Club, where there's this line where he says, "I want to shoot every panda that doesn't fuck the procreate. I want to destroy something beautiful." That's kind of the idea behind it. It's destroying something beautiful because you're not supposed to do that. Not because you get your jollies out of sticking a knife in a woman's throat. That's how I see that. So I never got the misogynistic angle, with a few exceptions where I thought it was too exploitative and a little too eager.
You know what I mean? Getting back to the original subject is like, why is it that these people are allowed to see these things and then say the rest of the country is not allowed?
And it needs to be cut before you're allowed to show it to the rest of my country. Because that's the
absolutely ridiculous.
Because they demanded, the British Board of Film Censors also demanded cuts be made to movies. You know, like cut 2 seconds from this stabbing, on this sex scene needs to be shorter or removed entirely.
It's like the Straw Dogs thing. He suggested, I think it was like a 2-second cut from the rape scene, and Peckinpah said no. And therefore, for something like 30 years, you couldn't see that film. But then, I mean, everything changed, and you know, DVDs came about at the turn of this century.
Thank God for DVD.
And of course, now you have everything streaming. But
Before then,
yeah. If you wanted to see these films,
they need to be brought in by some Serbian guy in a truck. Would have to hide them in between cheap steaks.
Sunday morning markets was where I always got mine.
Yeah, you would often get it from the Sunday morning market.
Oh, yes.
I like the homemade covers that they did for you as well.
Fantastic, yeah. And they were always £1 a piece. Yeah, well, there was always like this underground thing going on, like, oh, you'll never guess what I've got.
Where'd you get that?
Because I don't think, at least in the Netherlands, they weren't big on censorship. Now they are, but they weren't back in the day. So there were no real restrictions on that. We were always pretty clear on age restrictions, or at least warnings, saying like, look, there's got scary things. You're not allowed to watch that under 16. And my mom and pop video shop would not give you movies. They would kind of know what kind of movies they had, and you could get away with renting. I don't know. You could get away with renting. If you look at the manga section, you could get Venus Wars, but they wouldn't give you Akira because they're like, no, that's got people exploding and kind of thing. I'm not renting this to you.
Yeah.
So we were always pretty sensible about that, and I'm fine with it. Just if you put a thing on the back that says warning, graphic rape or someone, a lot of people get disemboweled in this movie, so you don't have to watch it because on the show we review movies that some are very specialized that I wouldn't recommend to anyone but the hardcore fans, and others are more enjoyable for a broader audience. And I think that distinction is enough.
But I mean, the nuance is so fine. I mean, on BBC One or BBC Two or whatever, you'd be able to see like a Hammer House, a horror film.
Yeah, true.
That were on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And you'd watch that. Vampire Circus was a particular favourite of mine. Bit of sex, some really nasty bodies torn apart, kind of dismemberment sort of stuff going on. But that was on telly.
Yeah.
So what was the difference between that being on telly and something on a video being cut and banned and whatever? I don't know. Who gave these people the power to make those decisions over our viewing pleasure?
Yeah. Because what was the rationale behind? Because you had the censorship board, but the actual ban came later because the age restrictions initially in the through the 70s were still voluntary.
Yeah.
And they didn't become mandatory until the 80s.
Well, I remember PG-13. That was a brand new categorization
came from. It was a Spielberg movie. I think it was E.T.
Really?
There was some distinction. It was a I know it was a Spielberg movie. I don't remember which one, but basically he essentially lobbied for that because the current system would restrict people from seeing his movie. And that's at least for the US.
Was it PG-13 or PG-12? I can't remember.
In the US it was 13. Okay. In the Netherlands it was 12.
Parental guidance.
Yes.
Well, that's where it all went wrong, didn't it? Because parents forgot how to guide their children, I suppose.
There was I know the rationale with the theatrical releases and video and telly and why that was different was what I keep hearing when you watch the documentaries and you read up on the video nasties. What I keep hearing is once you get it in the house, you don't know who's going to watch. Your kid could just sneak in and put the video on, whereas if it's on telly and it's on a designated time slot, you have more control over it. Which is a horseshit debate because the same applies for alcohol. There's age restriction on the sale of it. Once you get it into house, little Timmy can get into the cabinet and
Yeah, true. That's very true.
Cigarettes as well.
Yeah, and the same. So that it's a horseshit. Red herring.
That's why they had the watershed thing on TV, wasn't it? Like after 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, all kids were supposed to be in bed, weren't they?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You stayed up Friday night to watch what was the channel called?
There was Channel 4, and remember those pink or red triangle films when there was a special season where they literally put on porn and hardcore violent horror films.
Yeah.
It's just class. I remember when I was 8 years
Fear
old.
on Friday.
Fear on Friday.
That was the one.
My first horror movie was Cronenberg's The Fly. I was 8 years old. It was on TV. Like the bit where he's pulling his fingernails off and he's popping the abscesses. My mom comes in and she's like, "You're not watching that," and turns it off. I didn't notice the dick in the jar in that scene because I don't know what a penis looks like. So she sends me upstairs, and we still had a TV upstairs as well. So I finished the movie there.
But what was more addictive to you was your mother's reaction rather than the film itself.
Yes, because I love horror. That kicked off my obsession, and every book I borrowed from the library was a horror book. Every movie I tried to get my hands on was a horror movie, because it was fantastic, and some of it was really scary, but there was never any influence on my behavior from the medium. But it was just something that, I like it. And, later on, again, you'd be kind of weird if you were obsessed with horror. You'd be a weird kid in school. And later on, I got into punk music, and it's the same kind of thing where you're kind of a weirdo because you listen to, like, really shitty bands that don't know how to count. Get a terrible haircut. But it was the same kind of feeling, everybody's against it, so that's why I wanted more.
Yeah. But that's what they did with the UK. Everybody wanted to see it.
Yeah.
Because it had been literally hyped.
Yeah.
It was like, back then, that's how they hyped shit up.
And there were a couple of special cases. We mentioned that before. Child's Play 3, which was a terrible fucking movie. It was so shit. It was the worst sequel since Child's Play 2. Very, very controversial, even in the Netherlands, because I remember there was a criminal case, and I guess Justin can explain that in a sec, but I remember even my mom heard about that, and she's like, "You can't watch Child's Play movies because it drives people to kill." What was the...
Okay, this was the murder of Jamie Bulger, a 2-year-old child who was kidnapped by two 11-year-old boys, or maybe even 10-year-old boys, who took him away from a shopping centre and murdered him, beat him to death on a railway track. And the key issue here is, and where the link came to Child's Play, was they daubed his body with tragic, horrible case, don't get me wrong, but daubed his body in blue paint. Now, apparently in this scene in Child's Play, there is a scene where somebody is daubed with blue paint. The link was that one of the parents of these murdering kids had hired the film Child's Play. And those Part 3. And the children may have seen that film, and it may have influenced them to kidnap and murder this 2-year-old toddler.
Weak.
But the movie, there's no kidnapping in the movie. It's a killer doll that's been going after this one kid since the first movie because he's trying to swap bodies. It's at a military school. There's a bit where they've got the war games with paintball guns, and he gets a real gun and he starts shooting people. There's no connection to that at all. The first one, I would believe it more if it was the first movie, because the doll actually kidnaps the kid and takes him to like the fucking ghetto.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
But, well, no, I mean, that was enough to have newspapers then with their front pages burning copies of the video. And it was, this I guess was the second generation then of the video nasty. You had it in the 80s.
Because this is early 90s.
And this is the early 90s then, 1994, something like that.
Even sooner, even a little earlier.
93,
roughly that time.
94. And then this became a big case. But now, I mean, really, that film was then,
vilified.
It was the worst. It was the biggest threat to your children.
If you own that, save your kid. That's actually on the page. That's one of the images in the collage. Is save your children, burn your video nasties. If you own that movie, you'd be a monster.
Yeah, but you would also be a legend.
Yeah, that movie in England was like owning a copy of Mein Kampf. That's what it was. You're not supposed to own it because it was horrible. But if you read it, it's not like you read 20 pages. You're like, I gotta fucking kill all the Jews. But that doesn't happen.
But you watch that film, and now you compare that to something like Saw, or Hostel, or that Serbian film. What's it called again?
It's actually called a Serbian film. Yeah.
The Serbian film. I mean, those are really nasty.
Yeah, I don't like those. They don't. I still have a hard time believing that could influence anyone because there's actually no evidence of that per se. But
I mean, it's created its own genre now, isn't it? The torture porn.
Torture porn, which is already past. That was sort of early to late 2000s, and then after that came the James Wan fad. The Conjuring and stuff like that. Creepy things in the shadows.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, these are fads. That it comes. Yet the mid to late 90s, you had the slasher parodies like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. It comes in fads.
Yeah.
There's artless, meritless schlock being put out constantly. Is something like I Spit on Your Grave more damaging to society than Transformers 2?
No. I'm going to put it out there. No.
And not just because it's not damaging. You look at something like that. It's utterly without artistic merit. It's you could argue it's not. I don't want to say sexist because I think that's a bullshit term, but it's very. Megan Fox is only there as eye candy because the director, makes advertisements. The whole movie is 2-second shots. Everything is made to look like an advertisement. There's no artistic merit, which I'm not allowed to say. I don't think you're supposed to say that, but it's not made because he really wanted to tell that story.
You're basically saying that society is stupid. If you put out a DVD or a tape or whatever, and it has an 18 certificate on it, and your child is 11, do the math. They're not stupid.
No.
And that's basically what they're saying. You literally can't see this because you're stupid, and you let your kids watch it.
Yeah, you leave it lying around the house. And here's the thing: when I was young, and I still make those decisions now, I didn't want to watch everything. There were things that scared me to the point where I didn't want to watch it, or that I just didn't like because I thought it was too nasty. When I was 8 years old, I made that decision for myself.
Yeah.
Not as articulate as I would now, but you have that moral compass and that preference. I watched, there are movies now that I watched. What was it? Class of 1984. I hated it because it was utterly joyless. It was just violence. I didn't like any of it. You can make that decision even though I've been watching horror movies for the past 25 years. I haven't been brainwashed. It's a thing I like.
But that's what they were saying back then.
Yeah, you couldn't possibly...
You are literally not allowed to see this. We are.
Or decide if you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you are subversive, and a pervert,
yes,
and a potential murderer for even wanting to see this sort of thing.
But they're allowed to see it.
Yes.
Yeah. That's democracy for you, isn't it, really?
And yet they allowed, a film like The Blair Witch Project. Now, people died in the cinema saying that it was so scary.
Yeah.
I've read the press, I know, people died of heart attacks. And people actually literally shit themselves in multiplexes throughout Great Britain watching that film. Heart attacks and
defecation.
Involuntary defecation.
The Exorcist, when it was originally released, there were priests present, at least in several theaters in the Netherlands, to assist people after the movie if they were too stricken.
Now, that was a film that was banned in the UK.
Was it?
It was because...
It won an Oscar, maybe even 2.
It was banned at least for the video
video market
release because of the age of the Linda Blair character.
All
child.
the awful lines were dubbed by an adult actress, and she wasn't present for any of the horrific things.
Yeah.
But they don't They don't think. It's this alarmist, the Helen Lovejoy character from The Simpsons. Think of the children. Won't anyone please think of the children?
Yeah, but I mean, come on. You're allowed to read the book, but you can't see it on film.
You can see it on film, but you can't see it on video.
That's ridiculous.
Because presumably, the man in the theatre, the movie theatre, is more respectable than the man in the video shop.
Yeah,
because he's paying a little bit more.
You have more control. But maybe we could touch on the societal aspect of this seeking out violent media, because we've the argument is that horror movies, violent horror movies, exploitative movies influence people in a negative way. They make us more violent. The same debate is now raging about video games and has been for quite some time. Terry and I, both big horror fans, both big violent video game fans. Why do you think we seek out this violent media? Because it's for a big part, it's a guy thing. It kind of it's got that frequency, that it just hits you at the right spot.
Yeah, but it's satisfying in a way. But I don't sit and play Doom and then think, you know what, I'm going to go and buy a gun and shoot at people and think that they're aliens, and it's just ridiculous to me that people think if you watch violent stuff you are violent or crazy or weird or whatever. But it's ridiculous.
Yeah, but does it have an effect?
No,
you don't, because the people cite studies that have been done. Your heart rate goes up and you become more aggressive when you consume violent media.
Does it release endorphins? Is this the chemical thing?
That's kind of what I'm kind of hinting at. Is the if you look at it from a historical, sociological aspect, we don't really have in our society. We don't have existential threats. We have we go to work in an office, money is deposited in our bank account, we go to the supermarket where we buy a piece of dead animal and we fry it up. Mm-hmm. We don't get any sort of input of having to fight for survival, animals that might kill us, having to go and slaughter a chicken. We are not currently in a war. We don't risk getting killed. But our bodies are designed to be able to cope with threats like that, with that kind of inputs. So we are wired for that, but we don't do anything with it. And I was having a conversation with a friend talking about what seems like I don't know if widespread is the right word, but a sort of prevalence of people in our Western society with anxiety issues, which is basically adrenaline surges, you're going to die, you're in danger when there's nothing going on. And I think we're a very sedated society, and we seek this kind of media out, violent video games, movies, because it's some sort of release. It's a substitute.
Yeah, it is.
It's a substitute for going and taking a bow and arrow and shooting something and dying at the age of 30.
Which is why you have horror icons: Freddy, Jason,
yes,
Michael Myers.
Yes.
The Saw guy, the paranormal activity, all that. You have these icons because you seek out that medium for that release, and you praise these killers because they're doing what you would never do. But they're doing it on film because it isn't real. It's just a release. It's just a fantasy. An hour and a half or whatever of
and
fun.
It's not just to be very clear on that. This isn't wish fulfillment. I watched Friday the 13th. Well, don't watch that because it sucks. But these kind of movies, slasher movies, whatever. I don't think, I wish I could do that.
No.
But it's you need. I think we're wired for violence. as we're animals, and we are capable of fighting for survival, but we don't. And I think it's not wish fulfillment, but it's something kind of a taste of home, if I could put it in that sense.
It's fun. It's a giggle. You know, you can laugh. And,
True, that too.
And it's sometimes very, very creative. You know, it would never happen in reality ever.
You watch a movie, you get the fright, you go and then you laugh at your reaction, and it's a release of hormones.
It's like going to a fun fair and going on the big wheel or the ghost train or roller coaster.
Exactly.
You know, I would never go on a bungee jump. Some people do. It's cool. You know, it's their thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they're going to go jumping off stuff with an elastic band around their ankle. Right?
Yeah, it's true. But is it for all ages?
Mm-mm. I believe if it says 18, you have to be 18 to watch it.
Yeah.
But the same person who decides that is the same person who decides on the cuts.
In England.
In England, yeah. This is the board of classification, isn't it?
True. Good point. But I mean, you know, there should be rules and regulations and you know.
You watch a movie like The Terminator.
Yeah.
Would you show that to your 8-year-old son? Because no.
The first one.
The first one.
No, it's
a scary movie. But it's a scary movie. And it's violent, but
as a parent or an uncle or whatever, would you not make that decision based on the maturity level of the child?
Bingo. And that's the thing with everything, whether it's violent movies or gun ownership or something. Some kids are into that. Some kids are not. I've got a buddy of mine. He's got 2 kids. He's a huge horror fan.
Yeah.
You know, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, love that stuff.
Yeah.
His son, unfortunately, is kind of a scaredy cat. So they watched Gremlins, and he started crying. He said, "You want to watch Gremlins? Daddy loves this movie." And he said, "Okay." The bit right before they transform, he stops the movie and he tells the kid, says, "Okay, I'm gonna fast forward this movie to a bit so you see what they look like afterwards. It's just a still image. Yeah. If it's too scary for you, we'll stop the movie." So he puts that on, he shows the Gremlin, the kid starts crying right away, and he says, "Okay, we'll stop the movie." He acted like a parent.
Yeah, which is cool.
Picked a movie that he thought would be fun and raised his child and talked to his child like, "What do you like? Do you think this is okay?" That's all that's needed.
Yeah.
That's all that's needed. He said, "You know, my daughter's a little young, but she seems a bit tougher, so maybe I'll pass my horror collection on to her." Yeah. But you have to talk to your fucking kids.
Yeah, but I mean, if a director or whoever says, you know, I'm going to make a movie and I'm going to make it an 18, boom, it's an 18.
Yeah, he won't get money for that. Now you don't get money for X-rated anymore.
Yeah, but that's the way
that's a different. Yeah, but that's exactly. The Expendables, all those Expendables movies are shot for PG-13, and they add the blood later after they get the money, which is bullshit. Which is a whole different subject, but yeah. Very, very much against censorship. People are individuals, and some people, I know many adults who've been legally allowed to watch X-rated movies for many years, who don't because they don't like horror movies. And that is perfectly fine. Just because you're 18 doesn't mean you have to watch them. And just because you're 16 instead of 18, I don't think means that you should never be allowed to watch that. If you think you're ready for that...
Yeah, but it's there. It's a guideline.
Yes, it's there. Where it's a warning, where you go like, this is what it contains, and you can decide for yourself. Do you want to watch this movie about someone chainsawing hookers in their vaginas, whatever it is?
Yeah. I don't one of them. Yeah, probably The Shining. I saw The Shining as a 10 or 11-year-old. Mm-hmm. We actually got tickets to go and see, I think it was Moonraker or James Bond or whatever it was, but you know, in the cinema next door was The Shining, and we went in and watched that instead. It's fucking brilliant.
That movie is so good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, but that I guess it was an 18.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's like sex and fun. Well, not
Yeah.
so much fun, but very
My
scary.
first was,
And-
well, by my parents, my first was, we had a VHS and I wanted to see American Werewolf. I was 11 at the time, my brother was 10. And my mum and dad sat and watched it first, and they came out and they said, listen, if you want to watch it, by all means watch it. We're going to tell you that it is very, very, very scary. It's violent, it's gory. If you do sit and watch it, it's up to yourselves.
I don't want to hear you crying
But
afterwards.
if you have nightmares and that, it's on you.
Yes. Don't come waking us up.
Yeah, exactly. And so your parents actually did their job as parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were involved with their children's lives.
Yeah.
And you know, cost them an hour and a half.
Well, he had half an hour after because my dad was really into it and we wanted to talk about it. You know, that one scene where he turned into a wolf, oh, and he bit that guy's head off, yay!
Yeah. And it's true. You mentioned the Shining, and Stanley Kubrick was an artiste auteur or whatever. He went through great lengths to make sure that the kid in the movie didn't see any of the scary things. Again, being in control, making a decision based on that, on the individual.
Yeah. But for me, it should be up to the director to stamp the movie.
I think so too. I think he would be the best person to say, like, this is what I want to accomplish with the movie. This is who it is intended for. This is who I want to sell it to. Because a director isn't, the guy who made Absurd that we watched. He didn't make that so that 8-year-old children could watch. He's not interested in the 8-year-old market.
Huh?
He's interested in the 16 to 35-year-old market who buy movies from gas stations.
Literally.
And watch them, and they're kind of like, ooh, it's disgusting and kind of boring. I'm going to go out and have a smoke and come back, but let the movie run. That's his audience.
Yeah.
And that's the best take. But, there's factors, studio involvement. Studio says, okay, we want to make a movie for this market. That's where you're going to cut out the blood so we can sell it to 12-year-olds too.
I think literally that's the whole market right now, right?
It's real shit. There are people, the horror crowd likes to say, oh, horror sucks nowadays. It was way better in the 80s, etc. Which is nonsense, because if you look back at an entire decade of the 80s, you've got maybe 8 movies that are fantastic and a whole lot of crap. If you look at the entire 2000s, you're going to find 8 great movies and a whole lot of crap.
Did you see It Follows?
That was really good.
Excellent movie.
Scary as shit.
Yeah, excellently done.
That was really good, and that came out 2 years ago. You had Your Next
Yes.
home invasion movie, which was fantastic, really good. The Maniac remake, terrific.
Yeah, I loved it.
The Battery was really, really good.
I like the first The Purge movie.
I didn't see that.
Okay. What?
So they still
Nice idea, concept, yeah.
They still make good movies. I'm missing practical effects. They're sort of coming back. I'm hoping with all the money that Star Wars has been making that they go like, you know what, we could afford practical effects. It works, maybe.
Never.
What's the guy's name? I always forget his name. The guy who did the effects for American Werewolf from London and a bunch of other things. He retired recently.
Not Rob
Rick Baker?
Rick Baker, yeah.
Rick Baker. He retired because he's like, nobody's really doing practical effects anymore. So I'm hoping for a resurgence in horror. Maybe.
Wish in one hand and piss in the other and see which one's the fullest, mate.
It's true. Evil Dead had a lot of practical effects, the remake, but nobody went to see that, and it wasn't very good.
Oh, not very good, I think, though. That's putting it lightly.
Yeah. So, Video Nasties was a real thing. It had real effects. There are a number of really good documentaries made on the subject. What was the stretch of your thesis? You don't have to read out the whole thing, but just sort of the angle of it.
My angle, I did a case study on the Jimmy Bulger, and I think the title was the social or socio-political implications of British film censorship. And yeah, you explore the whole thing. I mean, for me, overall, I think my conclusion was that you just go with the age restrictions, but you don't cut, you don't ban.
Give people the option.
Give people the option.
As long as
and you know what? I think create more art cinemas, theatre houses, whatever, to enable people to show them and get on and do it. Because some of these films, they are better seen in the theatre anyway.
Yeah.
It's a collective
with a group thing where you get the
exactly.
group fright and the group relief, and you can boo the movie and laugh
cheer
at
the
it,
movie,
which is kind of what we're going for here. Is we're trying to, you know, it's a lot of crap, a lot of boring.
There's a gem now and again, though.
There's a gem. There's a peanut in the turd once in a while. Yeah. But it's very different. The industry has changed so much because you had direct to video, and then came DVD, which was a fucking godsend. Because folks, if you're too young to remember VHS, first of all, you had to rewind the thing. It would be full frame instead of widescreen, so they would cut. Oh, the movie would always be cut because they would cut the sides of the movie.
True.
I remember right before DVD became a thing, there was actually a sort of resurgence of uncut movies. I remember getting Evil Dead 1 and 2 uncut on an original VHS in the late 90s, early 2000s. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released uncut for the first time. And then DVD made it all affordable because, you know, a VHS was 40 guilders, that's about $20. And DVD, you could buy them for $5 a pop, and you could get special editions and uncut and all kinds of crazy stuff and making of it was fantastic.
The old days of the tracking button, though.
Oh god, man! We had at one point we had a Daewoo VCR, and the tracking on it was shit. Like if I were to record something on that VCR, I could not play it at anyone else's house, only on our VCR. That's how shit it was.
The tracking button on a video was like the choke on a car.
Yeah, true. And then you had those. You always had that one VHS recorder that ate the tape.
Oh yeah. We had I think was it Video 2000? That was the Philips system before VHS. We didn't have Betamax, but we had that one. It was just ridiculous thing, and I was the one who broke it. I put a cookie inside. It's the thing where you press the button and the tape holder flips up.
Yeah.
And I put a cookie inside and put it down.
Because I missed the eject and the
that
sound. I always missed that, you know.
Ours actually flipped up, so it wasn't a motor, but it flipped up.
You had one of those fancy ones.
Well, my grandfather used to work for Philips, so we got all the good shit after he was done with it.
And you always had to have the big felt tip pens to put in and wind it back.
Oh yeah.
And figure out where your pen was going to go to put the release mechanism on. Pull out the tabs on the back if you didn't want anybody to tape over it.
Yes, but then you could put a bit of cellophane tape over it if you want to record again.
Happy days.
Happy days. So yeah, it was different back then. But now you have the direct to video market is gone. DVD is gone. Nobody's buying Blu-ray except the hardcore collectors.
True.
I mean, DVD. I would buy 5 to 10 DVDs a month. I bought shitloads because they didn't cost anything and you could get so much stuff. Blu-ray, I buy 3 a year, if that. That market is gone. It's all streaming now, and it's the easiest time to get your movie released as a filmmaker, because streaming services, video on demand, it doesn't cost anything. There's no logistics or anything.
That's true.
No production costs, but it's impossible to get an audience
unless you create hype.
Yeah, there's so much out there now. And Netflix, I mean, I don't know what the selection is here in the Netherlands, but in Sweden it's shit. It's just stand-up comedy and some Marvel shit, I don't care. It's you get 5 movies.
Yeah. But there is a resurgence now in box office in the last few years, is that right? And people are actually going to
theaters.
the movies.
I mean, cash-wise, yes. but the selection is far, far smaller. I mean, movies have never made as much money as now. I mean, the first Avengers movie, not counting the Uma Thurman and Ralph Fiennes one, the Marvel Avengers movie, made, what was it, like 2.3 billion?
That's ridiculous.
It's like literally, I know the director Joss Whedon, he's all about like left-wing ideals, and you know what, that movie, the money that movie made, why don't you give that to Africa and pay off all their debts? You know? Since you've got such a big heart. No, but seriously, like, this is a reflection of the change in the 70s where movie theaters no longer showed schlock, and they went for the big budget releases. Now they book Star Wars, they book Marvel, I guess the DC stuff. They take up all the space. Mm-hmm. Because you only have so many screens and so many days in a year. And these screens are booked up years in advance. They've already booked the 2019 big budget movies because they know for sure that those seats are going to be filled. So your small art house zombie movie isn't going to be shown. Even where I live, the art house theater shows all the Star Wars movies that come out. I saw the movie Arrival there, which was fantastic.
Good film.
It was me and my girlfriend, nobody else in the theater.
Boy.
So it's more money is being spent by the public in theaters, but fewer movies are being seen. It's the same movie that's being seen.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because if you look at the lineup, the Marvel movies, the Star Wars movies, there's going to be 27. There's 27 movies planned already that you know for sure they're going to make, and that's bananas. What if people stop going to see them after movie 5? And that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. No, I know.
You have the fanboy content going in.
It's not even that. Here in the Netherlands, you can get a subscription to a movie theater. You pay €20 a month,
true.
and you can go see unlimited movies.
I've read and seen on this topic. Peter Bradshaw writes in The Observer, and Kermode from the BBC, and they're both of them calling that we need to re-look at this idea that franchise isn't bad and take it for what it is because they're here to stay. I don't know, but I just can't bring myself to go and see a Fast and Furious. So I mean,
I saw 2 of the recent ones and I loved it, but I didn't pay for them.
Okay.
I looked at them through a window. I totally didn't download them or anything like that. But George Lucas and Steven Spielberg gave a lecture at their old university talking about how dangerous this actual scenario, this business model actually is, because Steven Spielberg made a movie called War Horse.
Yep.
He couldn't get the money. The studio, he basically had to beg the studio for the money to make the movie. And this is Steven Spielberg who's never made a flop. He's one of the most highly regarded mainstream directors. His stuff is a bit too sentimental at times, but he knows how to make a good popcorn movie. Mm-hmm. He knows how to hit those marks. He couldn't get the movie. He couldn't get the money for the movie. These studios bet essentially their entire year on one movie. That's the so-called the tentpole movie that's supposed to hold up everything else. If too many of those fail, you had the Lone Ranger fail, you had, there were 2 Disney, John Carter failed as well. If too many of those fail in a row, the studio is done for. Now, both those movies, Lone Ranger and John Carter, were done by Disney, and they were kind of teetering, and then they made a really good decision and bought Marvel, and then they bought Star Wars, so they're fine. They're probably don't have to worry ever until electricity runs out. But it's gambling, betting all your money in one horse.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of variety. All these Marvel movies all kind of look the same. All these Star Wars movies all kind of look the same.
I mean, if for the last literally 6 months in my Facebook stream, all I saw was Alien Covenant. For months and months and months and months and months. behind the scenes. What do you think? How do you like this? It's just bombarded into your face.
All these websites that serve as nothing but advertisement for new movies.
Yeah.
Where
literally.
they don't even talk about the quality of the movie, but it's shit like, oh, the new X-Men, this character is gonna have her original hair color. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, and Marvel Avengers Part 9. This character may or may not be gay. Wow, that's new.
Are they gonna be fucking, or are they gonna be shooting lasers from their face? Because that's...
You're never gonna get no fucking in Marvel.
On the topic of Alien Covenant, I rewatched Prometheus.
So did I. I rewatched it 3 weeks ago.
Actually, it makes sense on the second viewing.
Yeah, I had no problems with the actual plot. Even the first time. The first time I was like, you know what? It's an ambitious movie, science fiction movie. I don't care if it failed. I'm okay with that. If they tried something, it's fine. I rewatched it. I'm like, you know what? The plot makes sense. It's about killing your dad. It's fine. But I hate every single character in the movie. They're so flat and stereotypical, except for Noomi Rapace and I want to say Mark Wahlberg, but that's not his name. The guy from Shameless, David.
The robot.
Yes.
Oh yes, him.
Adam Sandler.
Yes.
Fassbender.
That's the
Michael
one, yeah,
Fassbender, right.
Yeah, I always get mixed up.
Michael Sandler.
Yes.
Those two characters were the only ones that weren't TV stereotypes. And that's my problem with Prometheus is the characters.
Yeah.
Not the plot. Doesn't bother me if it doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter if like the lady doesn't run to the side when the ship is coming down. Didn't bother me. It's the characters are boring and stupid, and they belong in Lost, which was by the same writer.
I liked Lost. I'm sorry.
Which is fine. You can like it, but it's just it's a silly, stereotypical TV show, and that's okay. I love schlock. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be amazing. But yeah. Well, my friend went to see Alien Covenant. He said it's amazing. They made an alien movie worse than Alien Resurrection.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's just CG.
Yeah, that's what totally turned me off.
And just garbage. Ridley Scott, please hang it up.
Yeah, but he's got a fanboy base, man. That's what he's going for. That's what it is now.
He's 80
fanboy
something
base.
Yeah, 80 something.
He's from our neck of the woods, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
South Shields, I think.
Yeah.
Scott Free production. Oh my god, did you see the trailer for the Blade Runner?
Oh, the new Blade Runner.
Oh, fuck. Oh.
He's not directing though, is he? He's just
Executive producer. That means
producing.
that, he gets money to put his name on the movie. Ah, fuck it. But yeah, this is good conversation, I guess. I hope people listening to this, if you're still listening at this point, you know what? You're at your office job. You've got your headphones on. You're not doing any work. You maybe learned something.
We went way off topic though.
I could split it up into two parts, like one about video nasties and one kind of change in the movie distribution model.
True.
But whatever.
Yeah.
If you're still listening, I hope you've learned something. Go on YouTube, look up some of the cool documentaries on video nasties. So it's really interesting. I'll post one of them in the comments, I suppose. So we'll have more of an explanation of the whole history of British film censorship. It's kind of interesting topic.
You're drunk.
Yeah. Also have to pee. You're never gonna get class from us. It's not gonna. Even when we're being educational, we're still trash.
Educational?
Yeah.
Okay.
Terry, Vincent, thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us, Professor. It was an honour.
I forgot your first name already.
David.
Barry Nephew.
Barry Nephew.
Barry Nephew, yeah.
Fantastic.